Now, Benjamin and I, we went and picked up this family at the airport. It was about a month ago on a Friday morning, and it was really cool seeing them for the first time. Like, they just, they had this fear in their eyes, like, this is a big thing, and you can understand that. And they've traveled from, I think it was Beirut to Chicago to Omaha. That's a long flight and a lot of flying, and a little bit of fear. They just sensed like they were a little bit overwhelmed. But at the same time, like I just got the sense that they're hopeful, and like there's this chance like for peace in their life now where they didn't have that, like 48 hours before that. We took them to the duplex that they live in, and like the moment they walked in their doors, like things just totally changed. We saw them smiling for the first time, and they're like, we get to live in this place. Like, this is ours. Like, we don't have to share it with anybody else. There's not bombs going off down the street. There's no machine gun fire. We don't have to worry about people coming in and taking over our place. Like, this is ours. Like, that was the look in their eyes. I don't speak Arabic. They didn't speak English, but that was what I was getting from their look. And what they experienced that day in their new home was a thing that we call refuge. Now, I want you to go back to what, they must have been dealing with. And they live in, one of the most war-torn areas in the world. It was not safe for their kids to go out and play in the park. So what they now experienced was a refuge. A refuge is a place of safety from danger. A refuge is going to be a shelter from the storm of lives. Now, ultimately, we're going to look at what a refuge is these next 4 weeks. And a refuge for us is not going to be a duplex on 50th Street. The refuge for us actually isn't going to be a place. The refuge for us is going to be a person. Now, in 27 days, we're going to be in the auditorium, and we're going to be celebrating the birth of that person. But before that happens, today, we start this journey known as Advent. Advent, for those of you who know Latin, you know what this word means, coming or returning. The Greek word is parousia, and that word explicitly means Christ coming again. Now, you all remember like the affirmation, some of you will, of the historic church. Christ was born, Christ lived, Christ died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. Good. Never mind, I was going to say something funny, but it wasn't funny. On December 24th, I'm going to leave this building about 8 o'clock at night. I've been here since 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The band will be packed up. The communion people will be taking the bread and the juice home with them. I'll walk down like the long path to my car. It'll probably be the only car in the parking lot, and I'll have this prayer that I've prayed, and I've been praying it, and I will be praying it, and I'll keep praying it. In the prayer on December 24th is that this Christmas will be different because Jesus will be more active and more present in our hearts and in our minds. My prayer for all of us is that the baby who came into the world becomes the man who is the primary influence of our lives. That's my prayer. I really hope that. I hope in 27 days, because of this journey, that all of us can say that we are closer to Christ, that we have a greater understanding, a greater experience of what it means to have Jesus enter our lives. In our bulletin again this morning, we have a Bible reading plan. I want to encourage you, this isn't going to happen, 60 minutes on 4 Sundays. This happens daily, and just take a look at these Bible readings. They take about 3 or 4 minutes a day. We've specifically put these together for Advent, looking into Christmas. If you're part of a family, do these together. If you're in a small group, I know, like, our small group, the guys, like, we text message each other and, like, did this together. There's ways to do this. Read them at your small groups, read them at the dinner table, take them to work with you. Find a place for God in your life. Now, I will say that in the busyness of the next 27 days, in the consumerism that we will see, in our complicated and then often difficult world, I pray that we will experience refuge of the complexity of this world that we face, and that we'll experience peace for these anxious lives that we live. Now let me do a little poll here. So I need you guys to participate, okay? So this doesn't kind of mean like going like this, like actually like raise your hand above your head. So now who in here wants your life to be just a little bit more complex and complicated? Show of hands. Okay, so who wants your life maybe to be just like a little bit more simple? Cool, so most of us, we get this, right? Like complexity is part of our life, and so you're thinking, okay, Craig, I got this whole thing, you're right. I need to take this Jesus thing a little bit more seriously. I need to finally do those Bible readings that you pass out at the start of most series. I get that your prayer, and I want that to be me too. But I also want you to know that, like, my kid is in 3 Christmas programs. Like, work isn't stopping, and I still have to catch up and get ahead. And there's this big project, and there's dance, and there's band, and I have health insurance to buy. I have bills to pay. The oil in my car, that needs change. We have to decorate for Christmas. We have to get the annual Christmas card out. Now we're hosting for Christmas, so the house has got to get ready. We're leaving to central Nebraska the day after Christmas, so we got to get all packed. Now I'm going to do my best to get to this whole Jesus thing. So for all of us who are too busy, for all of us whose life is too complex, for all of us who just wish that things were a little bit more simple, these words that Jesus has, that AJ read a little bit ago, are words that we need to hear. So let's go to verse 36 from Matthew chapter 24. And I want to stop here for a second. So Matthew 24, we're at the end of that chapter. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells us probably his 3 most prophetic parables. In Matthew 26, Jesus is betrayed and his suffering begins. In 27, the suffering continues and he dies. Then Matthew 28, Matthew stops at that point. He talks about the resurrection, he puts the final period, and he closes the book. So at this point, Jesus would be 33 years old. He probably just has a couple weeks still to live when he says these words. So if you're near the end of your life and you know it, what words are you going to speak? You're going to speak the stuff that matters most. And that's what Jesus is doing here. Jesus says, however, no one knows the day or the hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. So here Jesus is talking about his second coming, that he will die and he will come again. Now, it's very clear that Jesus says, okay, no one knows when this is going to happen. The angels don't know it, you don't know it, I don't know it, only Dad knows. So, if you ever hear like one of these predictions, the world's going to end on like May 18th of 2017, just go back, nobody knows. Only the Father knows. Now, you're thinking to yourself, okay, Jesus, you said you're going to come back anytime, and that was 2,000 years ago. So no hurry, right? I can get up these Christmas lights, and we can get all the presents bought, and I can go out and find the ugliest sweater possible so I can finally win my neighborhood ugly sweater contest. Like, I got time for all this, right? And Jesus is like, no, you got to hold on for a second. I'm coming back. I'm going to return, not on your schedule, but not even on my schedule. Like, Dad's going to tell me when I have to come back. So here's how I'm going to just give you my thoughts on this for a second. I have always thought in my lifetime that Christ will return. I'm not, I didn't jump on the bandwagon 3 weeks ago. I've always thought this. Even like when I was a college student, I remember writing a paper, like on technology and science and communication. And I just figured that sometime in my lifetime, I'm 46. So if, I make it 46 more years, I'll be 92. I just always thought that sometime in my lifetime that somebody would get their hand on some type of nuclear weapon or chemical bomb or something like that. And I figured that it would make life very unsustainable here in the world. I've just always thought that. Now, I'm an optimistic person. I am, seriously. I believe the best in people. I have hope. I'm probably the only person alive that still believes that Nebraska could beat Iowa. Like with this one, though, it's just my personal opinion. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I am wrong. The timing is certainly going to be uncertain. But it's kind of like this. Like, say if something like this does happen, I want to talk to parents for a second. Let's just say that for some reason the next 15 or 20 or 30 years, our world drastically changes. Now, you have to admit this is a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I just say it's a possibility. It's life. We got to talk about it. So parents, what if, you see your children struggling? What is it that you first do? Well, many times what we do is we watch them struggle. No matter how painful it is, we know sometimes growth and development best happen when the kid struggles. That's how you learn. Now, what about when it happens for a long time and it appears the kid just isn't going to get any better? He's not going to get himself, she's not going to get herself out of the mess. What do? We step in. Okay, you've learned every lesson possible. I cannot take watching this any longer. Therefore, I'm going to help you. And sometimes I wonder if God is like that. Okay, you guys can do this. You can grow. You can learn. But I wonder if, we ever get to the point where, if there's some type of nuclear explosion or something like that, where Jesus and God have this conversation. It's time. We need to go down and we need to help these people. Christ will come again. Now, let's just say that I'm totally wrong and that life just goes on as normal. You are still going to have an individual encounter with Christ. It's going to happen to every single person in this room. I've checked my log. I've done 178 funerals. I've done funerals from everyone from a kid who was 0 days old, to a woman that was 105 years old. She was born in 1898. I've done a funeral for every possible age group in between them. A 7-year-old, a teenager, 22-year-old, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. The most popular group is the 70s. Those of you in the 80s are thinking, gosh, I'm doing pretty well here. 80s and 90s, and it's going to happen. We are going to meet God face to face one day. Now, you're thinking to yourself, okay, Craig, this isn't really the most uplifting message you've given, ever. I'm kind of depressed right now. I can see myself going home, and the neighbor says, hey, what do you talk about at church today? Well, we talked about the world is going to end, and I'm going to die. Now, you already knew this. I'm not telling anybody here something you don't already know. Now, Jesus, you know what the word gospel means? It means good news. We don't leave it at this. This is where we start. Jesus says, okay, this is a real issue. So let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Let's get to the point where we have faith and we practice that my grace is greater than the pain of the world. So in verse 37, the Bible says, when the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right after the time that Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. This is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. Now here, we're talking about the complexity of life. Things have changed in the last 2,000 years. There's still banquets, there's still parties, there's still weddings, but there's things that we do. There are things that we do to make our lives so complex. Like one of the things we do to complicate our lives is we start comparing ourselves to other people. We believe that if we had something that somebody else have, or if we had some type of relationship, then we'd finally have like happiness and fruitfulness in life. Some of us, what we'll do is we'll try to project an image of somebody that we're not, so we're thinking that other people will like us because we're projecting this image out to people, and it takes so much energy, to do this. Some of us think, okay, if we gain more money, we can buy more stuff and have more security, then we'll finally have contentment and joy in life. And the last one I was thinking of is success. Think about success as a person, success as a parent. If my kid's the valedictorian, if they're the star athlete, if they're the star musician, if they're the star debater, then people are going to think that we're good parents, and then we've made it in life. It's these are these gods that we have created. Now listen to what, these things have made life complex for many of us, right? So Jesus says, let's go back to the simplicity of the gospel. In verse 40, it says that two men will be working together in the field. One will be taken, the other will be left. Two women will be grinding flour at the mill. One will be taken, the other will be left. Now here, we can keep going then. So you too must keep watch, for you don't know what day your Lord is coming. Now I want you to think about that one. Jesus is very clear here. There's a heaven and there's a hell. He talks about this a lot. When he comes back, some are going to be ready, some are not going to be ready. Now, the good news here, the powerful good news here, and this is a good thing. This is a powerful good thing so Paul says that we're saved by grace through faith. It's not based upon what we do, it's based upon what we believe. Jesus himself says that for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him, whoever has faith in him, will not die, but will have eternal life. So then here's the good news in verse 42. So you too must keep watch, for you don't know the day your Lord is coming. So I want you to think about that here. What does it mean for us to keep watch? Here's where the good news is found. So let's continue in verse 43, the last two verses here. Understand this. Here's how we're keeping watch. If a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, would he keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into? You must also be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when it is least expected. So let me tell you a story to maybe flesh this out a little bit. Can we show the picture of the snowman? So this was a snowman that was built in 2011. Now, this is a cool snowman. We got the buttons, the scarf, the mouth, the carrot, the coal for the eyes. There's a hat up there. So we went to bed, and what do you think happened that night when we were sleeping? Okay, I'm going to ask the question again. Maybe you've just all tuned out. But what do you think happened to the snowman when we went to sleep? Yeah, so it got turned into a bunch of little snowballs. The carrot was gone. The thing was destroyed. So we got up the next day, and we weren't very happy about that. So what do you think we did? We rebuilt the snowman. Now, let's go back to the Bible verse here. If the homeowner knew exactly when the burglar was coming, he would keep watch. So what do you think I did that night? What do you think I did? Okay, I put on a black coat and some black jeans, and it just so happened that I had a big black dog. So I was sitting out on my porch, keeping watch over the snowman. It's kind of cold out, and no one came. I was ready. Didn't know when it was going to come. I knew they were coming. So, an hour and a half into something, okay, this is dumb. I'm going to go inside. They're not going to come. Then all of a sudden, I heard this voice. The snowman is back. And the next kid's like, the snowman is going down again. And I'm like, this is Georgia before we had Esther. I said, Georgia, get up. And she got up. The kids were walking to the snowman. I still can't see him. I can hear him. And all of a sudden, I said, Georgia, go get him. It's like if you had, Georgia was probably like 9 or 10 years old at this time. So like when you can like have a dog for like 10 years, you can actually communicate in the English language with your dog. I said, Georgia, go get him. And she like looked up at me and she says, Daddy, I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. Are you serious? And I said, go get him. Now, before you think I'm like some type of like mean property owner that is obsessed with snowmen, like there's nothing that's going to happen. Yes, it's true the dog weighs 150 pounds, but she was well trained, unlike our current dog. She is well trained, and she was not going to leave the perimeter of the property. And even if she got a hold of the kid, which was unlikely, all she was going to do was lick the kids with her tongue that's about the size of a Volkswagen. The kid might get a little frostbite, but that was going to be it. So she took off. She was excited. She wanted to play. So picture this. Like, here's like a defensive tackle trying to chase down like 2 wide receivers. It's not going to happen, but it's fun to watch. You had never seen 2 kids run so fast in your entire life. It was like Usain Bolt had nothing on these kids. So what I want us to do is live a life of readiness and preparation. Because you don't know when that day is coming. Not for all of us, not for any of us. I want you to ask yourself some questions. If you had to bet everything on whether there is a God or whether there isn't, which side would you place your money on and why? When you look at your face in the mirror, what do you see in it that you most like? And what do you see in it that you least like? How are you going to build on that solid foundation that you've already been laying? How are you going to improve on what's great? And how are you going to make better what's not so good? People change, people grow, people learn all the time. We can do this. If you only had one last message to leave a handful of people who are most important to you, in a couple dozen words, what would that message be? It's time for us to start writing this message. It's time to share that message. It's time for us to live out that message. This world is going to be as complex as you let it become. But the message of the gospel is simplicity. Be faithful. Keep watch. Be ready. And when that happens, the complexity is going to disappear. All of a sudden, the comparison and the envy is going to turn into things like gratitude and generosity because we're ready. The things like image projection and image management is going to go away because we're now living under the acceptance of God himself. The money, it will be an issue for us, but our ultimate security is going to be in the creator of the world. This quest for success is going to transform into this movement toward significance. Now, when Jesus returns, this is a good thing. It's a good thing, and I want you to know, the joy and satisfaction and contentment that you're going to receive this Christmas is not going to be on that perfect present that you buy for somebody, or that new cookie recipe, or even winning your HOA neighborhood light display. What's going to make this Christmas significant is you can say, this is a time in my life when I realize that what Jesus is saying here is true. That God is going to be first. That I'm going to start to live a life of preparation and readiness. And when that day comes, I'm going to be ready. So let's pray.